What's up, everyone? In this issue of Motive Quick Drive, we get to drive three twin-turbo supercar monsters: the Ferrari 488 Pista, the McLaren 720S and the Porsche GT2 RS. Now, thanks to our long-standing relationship with the guys at Dream Racing, we get to drive some pretty cool stuff there that we simply couldn't get our hands on in Australia. And if we did, we wouldn't get to drive them at maximum attack around a racetrack. The best part about Dream Racing is, well, anyone can go there and drive them as well.
Now, I'm no pro driver, so I'm not here to show you what lap times they can achieve in a perfect scenario in perfect conditions. Those times are available in plenty of other videos on the net. But I'm a handy enough driver to set a decent lap and get a good feel for what the car is like and compare it to others. Having only 5 laps means I get to test how accessible each car really is for an enthusiast, as opposed to how quick you'll go after a bunch of seat time with an instructor. The Ferrari 488 Pista, McLaren 720S and Porsche GT2 RS are the most powerful supercars at Dream Racing and are all the things that dreams are made of. The hardest part was to choose which one to drive first. I went for the Ferrari 488 Pista.
Now, my history with Ferrari hasn't been great. I didn't really enjoy them the first time I drove them, and I thought the 458 was very nervous and not really that enjoyable to drive, and I've struggled to kind of get on top of the driving style required to get the most out of them. Now, when I drove the 488 GTB, my opinion of Ferrari changed a little bit. Maybe it was because it's got turbos, who knows? So you'd think that the more hardcore track version would be even better.
First up, looks-wise, the Ferrari 488 Pista is simply epic. So many little details to check out. Stuff you could stare at for hours and never get sick of. Typical of a Ferrari. And the interior is just simply incredible. Driving-wise, the turbo torque makes for a very rapid machine, more than the tyres can handle on a cold track. Luckily, there is some electronic help to rein that in. Jump on board for my quickest lap in the Pista.
Now, to be honest, the Ferrari is pretty hard to fault. It had great steering feedback, great balance, great drivability. The amount of torque that it has makes it a very quick thing indeed. And they've also made it very accessible for both old rich dudes and enthusiasts alike, depending on where you have that little switch on the steering wheel.
It was the perfect car to warm up for the day, and a 56.1 second lap isn't bad at all.
Next up is a car that I've wanted to drive for a very long time, the McLaren 720S, mostly because of that number in its name, which is, well, how much horsepower it's got.
The looks of the McLaren are a bit more futuristic and polarise opinion a bit more. I think the colour, light and location has a lot to do with how good it looks, but think it's a little awkward at times. The interior is supercar spec, but just doesn't have the same exotic feel of a Ferrari. But I was keen to try out that power.
So the McLaren 720S around a racetrack was, well, interesting to say the least. The instructors had the same opinion I did, and that is that the car felt a little bit disconnected. One of them even said that it felt like using a driving simulator that was hovering over the track rather than actually feeling like you're driving the car. It simply just kind of didn't gel with the car at all, is probably the best way to put it. Now, one example of feeling a bit disconnected is all about how it has torque management versus steering angle. Now, normally a driver, when you're driving your track car, as you come out of the corner, you apply throttle as you're unwinding the steering lock, because obviously as you unwind steering lock, you can have more traction and then you get more throttle as you sort of drive off the corner smoothly. But with the McLaren, well, it felt like it wouldn't add the power until after I'd unwound the lock. So it just kind of felt really disjointed. I'm trying to unwind lock, then get the power, rather than trying to kind of feed the power in and unwind the lock at the same time. Just didn't feel very smooth and very disjointed. But I guess on the flip side, that's a safety net for the average person that can afford one of these, no offense, who may not have had a lot of driver tuition. And if they're driving on the street, well, it's got a lot of grunt, it's pretty dangerous. So that safety net is obviously a good thing for a lot of their clientele. Now, the McLaren is mega fast in a straight line, but the problem is you don't really get to feel that until fourth gear. So on the tight technical track at Dream Racing, simply didn't get to exploit it. I honestly believe the 720S on a really bigger, faster flowing track, or even just out on the highway, would be way more fun where you can exploit that sort of power. I actually secretly wish it was four-wheel drive, just so it could make the most of it. Now, with all that opinion aside, I did manage to go quicker in the McLaren 720S, by 6/10 with a 55.4. Now, how much of that was me just, well, finding my groove with the track that I hadn't driven in a while, and how much of that was the car? I don't really know. But so far, when it comes to driver enjoyment, the Pista is in the lead. However, I did save what me and many of the instructors said would be the best till last, the Porsche 911 GT2 RS.
Up until now, the quickest lap time I've done here in a street car is the Porsche GT3 RS with a 54.1 second lap, and a Porsche Cup car on slicks with a 51.6 second lap. So I had high expectations for the GT2 RS. But could its monster torque and power be utilised on such a tight and technical track? And would the cold winter weather allow it, as it was pretty slippery out there? Porsche has always been more subtle in the looks department compared to other supercars, but the GT2 RS has much more added aggression with its wings, vents and aero upgrades. The interior is pure business. It shows that if you buy a Porsche GT car, performance is the priority, not looks or posing. So, let's get to it.
No, it was very good. I don't know if this will surprise you or excite you, but you were only about 2 seconds off of their cup car time in a street car.
I do a 53 in this.
Yes.
It's my new PB in a street car.
Is it?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I've done a 54.1 in a GT3 RS, so that proves that even with how more, I guess, difficult this is to master, I was able to go quicker on a colder track.
I was to say, what time of the year were you in that GT3
like start of November, where it's still quite mild and nice. Like it was
it's
perfect.
probably like 75, gorgeous.
Yeah, gorgeous weather.
Even if you had a little more grip, you would have been
Yeah,
closer to the 52 range, which
Oh,
I
dude.
think that this car,
that's where it's
that's
at.
the limit.
So I was
the
starting
52s.
to
You're
actually
getting there,
exploit
yeah.
the car a little. With those two, that last 10%, I felt like I had to learn it first, then go harder.
Mm-hmm.
With this, I felt like I'd go harder, and that would make me learn, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah,
So
make the mistake.
I
Okay,
can
there
make
it
the
is, there it
mistake,
is,
push hard, make the mistake, back it off a bit there next lap.
Yeah.
Like I felt like I could fine tune a lot quicker.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah.
For me, every Porsche, every time I drive, every time I take a corner, I'm like, more. More. Until I'm over, I'm like, more. With the Ferraris, Lamborghini, a little bit like the Porsche, where I can make a mistake, push hard, and be like, okay, that was just a bit. But Ferrari, it wants to be just almost like the smoother the better.
Yeah.
Where this is like, you can be aggressive. And
Yeah,
get all
I wanted
of
to
it.
come out of turn one and just stand on it,
Yeah.
and I wanted it to be ruthless.
Yeah,
While those two,
exactly.
I'm like, no, just a bit
Exactly.
smoother.
That's why
so-
the Porsches are just so much fun to do.
I'm driving this again at some stage, I can tell you.
Now, after only a handful of laps in the Porsche GT2 RS, I was able to get a PB for a street car at the Dream Racing track with a 53.8 second lap. Now, the fact that I went quicker than the car I've got a lot of experience in, which is the Porsche GT3 RS, and we're able to do it on a slippery track, lets me feel like, well, I reckon I could go even quicker in that car with only another 5 laps. And that's the thing about the Porsche GT2 RS. If you're a driver, if you've got some driving experience, you can get up to speed very quickly with that car. And it's just, well, fun. I don't know how Porsche does it, but they just seem to engineer some type of fun factor, weird for Germans, right, into their cars, and you just can't completely explain it. I could do 100 laps in any of the Porsche GT cars and I just wouldn't get bored, and you're just constantly trying to refine your driving because the car is just so capable. So if you want to compare the 3 cars all up, I think the McLaren 720S is probably the one that you get to impress your mates with how fast it is. The 488 is probably the one that you buy if you want to drive it around on the street and pretend that you do track days, even though it is completely capable. But if you want to do track days and you're a driver, well, the Porsche GT2 RS, once again, just can't be beaten.